Most people in their 20s and 30s don't know what they're doing when it comes to their money. So I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to do to build wealth now. It can be very confusing trying to find the right source of information on how to build your wealth. There's all sorts of information online, particularly on social media now, from various different influencers that will try and give you their secret tips and tricks. But the reality is, it's a long game and you need to be patient with it. There isn't a magic source. There isn't a secret formula of how to daily trade to build enormous wealth over a short period of time. I deal with clients on a daily basis who have built wealth slowly over decades, and they now get to live the life they've always wanted to live. That is still true today for 20 and 30-year-olds as it was 20, 30 years ago. So I'm going to talk you through exactly what you need to do now. And even if you've done nothing so far in terms of looking after your own finances, it doesn't matter. If you do this today and you start this process, I promise you're going to make a massive difference for yourself now and in the future. If you're focused on building your wealth in your 20s and 30s, here's the first thing you need to do. Now, I've done videos in the past explaining my AC/DC principle, which essentially is to firstly analyze your income and your spending. You then need to calculate how much surplus income you have each month. You then need to set up your direct debits and then regularly calibrate as your earnings change over time. So, analyze. This is a little bit of a daunting exercise, but you need to look into the mirror. Looking at your bank statements over the last month or 3 months is quite an uncomfortable thing, but it is staring into the cold, hard reality as opposed to the version of yourself that maybe you think you are. And what that will do, it'll tell you a few things. It'll tell you firstly your habits and your spending, which you may feel uncomfortable with, but also we'll get an understanding of what surplus income you have to contribute towards your savings going forward. So take a month, 2, 3, go back through your statements, see what your spending habits have been, understand what your surplus is. If there's a shortfall and you feel like you're spending either all of the money that comes in or sometimes you're creeping over that and you're going into debt slightly, that is something that needs to be addressed, and that's where the budgeting will come in. And then you need to understand what you're overspending on and what you need to make cuts on, and you need to be harsh with this. So once you've done that, you've calculated what your surplus income is. That surplus income needs to be designated to your savings at the beginning of the month. So the next stage then is to automate, set up direct debits, pay those direct debits as soon as you get paid into your ISAs, your pensions, your cash reserves. I'll talk you through what pots you need to hold. Firstly, you need to have an emergency fund. So that is to cover all eventualities that life might throw at you. A good rule of thumb is 3 to 6 months worth of cash in terms of how much you spend every month. Your outgoings, times that by 3 to 6, somewhere around there. And that's kind of how much you need in cash. Beyond that, that's when you can start to save for longer term and start to invest some of your surplus savings. Outside of the emergency fund then, you can have a pot again, probably should still be in cash, but look for higher interest savings accounts or higher interest instant access cash ISAs. And this is for larger planned expenditures, maybe holidays, work to your house, renovations, that sort of thing. Beyond that, that's when you start to invest for the long term. So anything that you know you're not going to touch for 2, 3 plus years, that's where you save into your stocks and shares ISA, save into your pension. These two accounts are both free from capital gains tax, so all the growth inside is growing tax-free. And that's what's going to outstrip inflation, outstrip your cash growth, and provide you with genuine protection of your wealth over the long term, not just treading water and most likely falling behind and eroding your wealth over time. So once you've got to grips with your spending, how much surplus you have, and you've got those pots lined up, then you need to set up your direct debit. So automate your payments into your savings account, automate your payments into your stocks and shares ISA. And if you've not got enough contributions going to your pensions through your employer or your own employee contributions into your pension as well. Pensions are fantastic for retirement savings because they provide full tax relief on the way in, which for a lot of people is probably going to be more than the tax you pay on the way out. So not only do you get all the capital growth free from tax, but you also get a tax uplift because your relief is going to be higher than what you're paying on the way out at the other end. On top of that, you get 25% tax free. So the last stage of that is to calibrate. And that's where you just simply relook at this process every few years. If you've had a pay rise, check it out again. If things have changed in your life and spending's increased or decreased, relook at this. It comes back to the 50, 30, 20 rule, which is not a rule, it's not science, but it's a good gauge. Now, I'd like to flip that, because the saving element of it, paying your future self, is the most important of those three sections. Now, of course, you've got to pay your bills, you've got to pay your rent, you've got to pay your mortgage, but actually, I would say it's even more of a non-negotiable to pay yourself. You're the most important person in your own life. So make sure that 20 comes first. Call it the 20, 50, 30 rule. The three decisions that will compound over time and determine what wealth you will have in years to come are how much you're spending, how much you're saving, how often you're saving, and where you're saving. Now, we've covered off those first two, so let's look at the third. Where do you put your savings for the long term? This is where your stocks and shares ISA comes in. This is where your pension comes in. These are your two key products. Inside your ISA and inside your pension, you've got carte blanche to essentially invest your savings how you like. Firstly, it's really critical to understand your capacity for risk. Okay? That can be done. You can fill in a risk questionnaire online. You need to factor in your timeline. You need to understand your appetite, how comfortable you are with the level of risk. For a lot of people in their 20s and 30s, that time horizon allows you to take a great deal more risk than perhaps somebody who is in their 40s, 50s, approaching retirement, who is about to become reliant on the savings that they've managed to accumulate over their lifetime. So the good news for you is you don't really need to have any involvement in this whatsoever. This is back to boring over flashy. So your involvement here can be absolutely minimal. You can effectively invest into a index fund. Now, there are hundreds of index funds that can be accessed via all the major online investment platforms. And what an index fund is, it essentially tracks the market for you. So it just takes a proportion of all the companies on the major stock exchanges, and you just track that. So as the price of the stock market increases, your portfolio increases in line with that. They're very low cost. They're absolutely zero involvement from you as the investor. And evidence shows that this outperforms active fund managers more regularly than they outperform the market. So if fund managers, with all of the research departments and analysis details that they have, can't get it right, don't try it yourself. So the beauty of this is it's evidence-backed. And actually, within the industry, it's often referred to as evidence-based investing. Now, the evidence is that the data clearly shows if you try to invest money yourself and you try to buy and sell at certain times, essentially trying to time the market instead of just literally having time in the market, if you missed the 10 best performing days over the last 30 years, you'd have cut your returns in half. Now, if you missed the best 30 days over the last 30 years, you'd have reduced your returns by around about 84%. That's going to have a staggeringly negative impact on your wealth by the time that you've reached retirement. Data from JP Morgan suggests that an investment of £10,000 over 20 years, just held in an S&P 500 index fund, could be worth just over £64,000. But missing those best 10 days over that 20-year period, the value of your portfolio would be worth less than £30,000. Now, the beauty of investing in index funds is you're allowing the compounding to do all the investment work for you. So the power of compounding works better the sooner you invest. So just as an example, a 25-year-old investing £50 until the age of 65 could expect, with an average return of around about 7% a year, a fund at the end of that of around about £119,000. If you started just 10 years later at 35, that same investment pattern of £50 saved every month would only be worth £54,000. So quite a stark difference, or over double by starting just 10 years earlier over that 35 years. Now, the reason I know that this works is because I've seen it over and over again. My client stories tell me consistently, and they reaffirm this evidence, that simple and consistent compounded saving over a long period of time generates wealth. I've got a good example. I've got a client who worked not as a CEO or business owner. He worked for an airline company, not a pilot, but cabin crew and management roles. And he was not frivolous. he saved, he never lived beyond his means, and he was consistent. And he now lives half the year in the UK, he lives half the year in Brazil, he spends his winters over there. He retired 25 years ago. He's got a large investment portfolio and he's living a very, very, very comfortable life. That's one example. And he was never from money, he was never given anything, but simply doing the boring things correctly and consistently has given him a life that he probably didn't imagine he would have had when he was younger. So, how do you go about doing this? Start now. Look back over the last month's worth of bank statements, last 2 months, 3 months, if you want to get a really good grasp, because there might have been an anomaly in the last month. Do your calculations, automate your savings, set up a stocks and shares ISA if you don't already have one, and automate a monthly payment as the first thing you do at the beginning of each month going forward. In terms of who you'd set up with, there are multiple good stocks and shares platforms out there. Have a quick Google, do your own research, check out the fees, make sure you're not paying more than you need to, open an account, choose your underlying investments, and then you started your journey.